Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on Channel 1 Television. On The Point of View, we pick the big topics, we get the right guests, ask the relevant questions on issues that matter to you. It's 40 days to election 2024, and tonight we're taking into another survey. Last week we brought you a survey from the NCCE on people's views about elections. Those samples were taken in September this year. Well, from the middle to end of August, the CDD's Afrobarometer report was also released, and this is the round 9. And we have some very important insights to share about people's views on corruption, trust in institutions, and of course, elections and election 2024. Stay with us. So tonight we'll be going into a report presented by the Afrobarometer team here in Ghana on very important issues: trust in institutions, corruption, and of course the election. As I said, there are 40 days to the election, and these days we want to give you some key insights. What we'll do tonight, apart from walking you through the Afrobarometer highlights, is also to compare some of the findings with other surveys. So the NCC report, which they also did, which was nationally representative, the results are also there. We'll do some very interesting comparisons for you as well, so you can get a clearer understanding of what Ghanaians think about these three important things. Now, starting off with giving honor to whom honor is due. So this is an Afrobarometer survey. Dr. Edem Selome is the Director of Research at CDD. So just like the NCC Director of Research for last week, we're bringing you Director of Research. This is what these guys do for a living. CDD Ghana being the local partner for Afrobarometer. And this is the topic: views on trust in institutions, corruptions, and elections. This is round 10, not round 9, as I said, round 10 Afrobarometer. Now, what is the Afrobarometer? So this is done across the continent of Africa. Non-Partisan Survey Network is the name, to give African publics a voice in policy and decision-making. They want to know what Africans think about very important things. They've done 9 survey rounds in up to 42 countries since 1999. So if you're talking of longevity, you're talking of longitudinal, you want to compare, I always trust a survey that has a longer history, so you can compare how the trends flow. So this is a very important survey. This is round 10 of Afrobarometer. Now, the countries in deep red have had the Afrobarometer since inception. So Ghana is privileged. The first round from 99, Ghana was part, Nigeria was part, Mali was part. A lot of Southern African countries were part. The countries in the center of Africa have never been surveyed, so they're out. The orange colors joined in 2002. So Burkina Faso, Benin, a few of the Senegal, Liberia, they joined, and of course Mozambique and Madagascar, they joined in 2002. And of course the yellows, a lot of Francophone West Africans joined from 2011. So you can see that Ghana has a rich history of Afrobarometer that can help us see how Ghanaians think right from the early 2000s. So we have over 25 years of data. And I think it's very important to see how Ghanaians' views about important issues have changed in a quarter of a century. That's 25 years of work. Don't forget, we've had the Fourth Republic since 1993, right? So almost 25 of those 30 years, we've surveyed people's views about many things. So this is a really great background. Of course, the samples is nationally representative, but what is important is that these are people who are 18 years and above. So these are voters. These are voters as well. Okay, now, face-to-face interviews are conducted. This has been done. The method has been proven. Key difference here, 2,400 respondents. If you look at the NCCU, and the respondents were a bit more, almost 9K, right? But this is 2,400, and data collected in August. Again, the NCC data was collected in September, but this is still very close. We're in October and entering November. Now, the reason I put this up is the sample is very reflective of the national population distribution. So as you know, Greater Accra is the most populous region, followed by Ashanti. Then there's Eastern, Central, Western, and the Northern. This is the same sort of sample they use, right? So they were true to the sampling. In fact, you look at voters as well. Greater Accra has 3.7 million voters, Ashanti 3.2 million voters, and then you have Eastern 1.8 million, Central about 1.78, and then Western follows with Northern. Again, very similar. The 4 smallest regions by voter population, again, Northeast, Savannah, Oti, and Ahafo. So the same kind of national sampling, very important for its representativeness. So a sample is not it's not, if you talk to 500,000 people, you don't learn anything more than if you talk to 5,000, if you get the sampling right. So you can talk to 500,000 people in Accra, and it will not give you any insight about the nation. But you can talk to 5,000 people in the whole Ghana, and because of the way you do your sampling, this will be very representative, i.e. it's a good predictor of what the national average is. So sampling is a very critical point, and I think they made the sampling point much earlier. All right, they made a sampling point here that sample size yields country-level results with a margin of sampling error plus or minus 2 percentage points at the 95% confidence interval level. All right. Now, as I said, this was between early to mid-August. So we're going to break this into two. The first part is in relation to trust in institutions and then corruption. So don't forget, Obama has told us we don't need strong personalities, we need strong institutions. So there's one of my favorite quotes in this season. Nothing is possible without people, but nothing is lasting without institutions, right? So if you want to develop a great country, a great company, a great, whatever you want to develop, you need a great person to start it, but you need an effective institution to sustain it. So this is a very important point. So when Afrobarometer looks at institutions, if you can trust an institution, it means that, for example, EC, Afarijan was the personality who you can say was our second Electoral Commission chair, did a very great job. But having left, the institution must outlive him. So institutions are very important for democracy and for good governance, right? So what were the key issues? Now, this is a very important question. How much do you trust each of the following institutions? And by the way, as you watch this, you can decide where you are on these, right? This is the response of Ghanaians, but you can also tell us, you can send us an email, tell us which institution you trust. Now, how much do you trust each of the following, or you haven't heard enough to know? So basically, if you know this institution, do you trust them? If you do, how much? Do you trust them a lot, a little, or not at all? Or you don't know about the institution, you can't form from a judgment. Now, this is a ranking of the institutions that got the best response. Right now, the deep blue is I trust them a lot. The light blue is I trust them some way. Okay, so there are two ways of analysis. You can say, okay, let me look at the deep blues to see what are Ghanaians saying about these institutions. How many Ghanaians say I trust these guys a lot? And guess what? The Ghana Armed Forces had the most trust. 41% of the respondents said armed forces are the trust. This is interesting. This is a country that has come from military dictatorship to democracy, right? And the highest percentage of I trust them a lot is the army. Make of that what you would, all right? Now, in that series, the second was religious leaders and NGOs, 25% each, right? Religious leaders. So, the top four, army, religious leaders, pastors and imams and sheikhs, and Okomfo, NGOs and CSOs, same amount. Ministry of Health, 22%. We should go and find out what they're doing there. I'm sure they have a good thing to say. But that's, of course, 22 is not that high, but in the rankings, the top four. Traditional leaders, chiefs, 20%. So these are the top five. Now, here's the problem. The president is 14%. 14% say they trust the president a lot. That is atrocious. We'll show you some history on this. 13% trust the courts a lot. Can you imagine? Courts that are supposed to settle our disputes. 13% of Ghanaians. Less than 20%. EC, 11%. Come on, guys. Police, 11%. Opposition political parties, even worse, 10%. MPP, 10%. MPs, 9%. MDC is 8%. It gets worse. Assemblymen, very low. Now, if you add, okay, I trust them a lot or I trust them some way. I trust them, but not too much. Okay, put that together. Again, the armed forces, that's 65% in a comfortable lead. So the army is trusted in Ghana. That's, for some democratic people, they are like, this is not great. Well, I prefer an army that's trusted than an army that's not trusted, right? So it's better to trust your army than not to trust them because you give them weapons. So it's better for them to be trusted. So they are probably doing something right. Now, that doesn't mean that if you come and take over the country, right? And people who are elected into office should be worried that unelected soldiers have more trust than elected officials. That's the problem. So it's not the army's fault. It's the leaders who do things for. So look at this. Religious leaders, if you put together the top two, 49%, less than 50%. Religious leaders, can you imagine? They trust army more than religious leaders. All right? NGOs, so NGOs are slightly a bit higher. So if you put the two together, it's 40. 52%. Ministry of Health, 49%. Traditional leaders, 42%. When you put the two together. When you put the president, 28%. Unbelievable. Of course, if you've been watching some of the other surveys, this shouldn't be too surprising. Approval ratings, Musa Dankwa, Global Info Analytics, these things are there. So, right? Courts, 35%. Really, really serious. EC, we'll come to the EC later, 28%. Now, the EC is problematic because when we took the NCCE survey as well, the EC didn't score very highly. All right? The EC didn't score very highly. In fact, when they did the people who trust the electoral system, it was less than 60%. And in fact, when you take the regional breakdown, 55% Northeast for the highest, Volta was like 20-something%. So the EC on average was below 50%. About 43% people trusted the Electoral Commission. I thought that was really sad. All right? Opposition parties, 27. MPP, 22. MPs, 25. This is very serious. Even our local assembly guys, who you think we are closer to. So there's a reduction. In fact, I'm going to show you this. This is going to make this even clearer, right? From 2012 to 2024, in a 12-year period, trust in all of these institutions, you can say, is at an all-time low, right? So, for example, MPs, 2012, it was 49%. It went up to 2017's 58%. Look at it. Only 24% either trust a lot or somewhat. So there's been a 25% drop, percentage point drop between 2012 and 2024 for MPs. Look at opposition political parties, 27% drop. Ruling party, 25% drop. President's all-time high was 2017. This was 73% said they trusted him. Now it's only 28%. That's almost a 30% drop in the president's trustworthiness rating by Ghanaians. This is very, very serious. Police, 14% drop, right? Courts, 22%. I mean, this is, we should be very concerned. CJ, IGP, president, everybody. EC, look at EC. 2012 was 59. Of course, there was an election persistence in 2013. It came down 37 in 2014, not surprising. 2017 election, opposition won, 54% is high. 2019, the same. 2022 is 33%. Now it's 28%. EC of these has the highest drop in percentage points for trust. Come on, what's happening? 30% drop for EC. Armed Forces, only 7% drop. So Armed Forces has been consistent. 2012, 72%. 2017, 75%. 72. So this 65, which is the highest in Ghana, is even lower than it was in 2012. So you can say that there's been an erosion of trust in institutions across the board. And institutions of democracy that are supposed to sustain a democracy, the courts, look at that, only 35% trust or something. This is not good. This needs a big national dialogue, and we need to thank Afrobarometer for putting this out so clearly. What was the question? How much do you trust each of the following institutions? And over the years, there's been a massive decline in trust for these institutions. Really, really troubling indeed. Now, the other issue is corruption, right? So we know that corruption is a major issue. Indeed, Afrobarometer made its name because its corruption index was very respected. It still is, right? Here's the question. How many of the following people do you think are involved in corruption, right? So this one, the higher your mark, the worse it is. In the first one, the higher your mark, the better it is, because we're talking about, do you trust these guys? But they're asking you, how many of these people do you think, and the question is, the deep violet means, I think all these guys are involved in corruption, or most of them are. And then the light move is like some of them are. So again, you put the two together. 63% of the people say, police, they are corrupt. Can you imagine? 63%. They think the police is mostly corrupt. All right. If you add somewhat, that's 94% of respondents think the police are mostly corrupt or a lot of them are corrupt. That is just terrible. Despite Dan Paris' efforts, perception for police, it keeps happening all the time. Office of the presidency. Can you imagine? In the deep violet corner of most, 54% say they think office of the president is corrupt. This is not good for us at all, 54%. If you don't trust your office or the president, what can you trust, right? If you add the other one, that takes you to 90% of the people think either most or some of the people in that office are corrupt, all right? Tax officials, GRA, 53, closely following the presidency. MPs, 51, all right? And when you add, this is just unbelievable. So MPs, 91% perceive corruption. Tax officials also around the same. Judges and magistrates, look at that. I mean, this is very serious. All right, 91%. EC, we shouldn't be talking about EC and corruption. So what are they even doing here? They shouldn't be here. MMDCs, look at that. 90%. 43 plus 47, that's 90, right? Civil servants, 90%. Assemblymen, high. Business, traditional. Even public media journalists, mostly 24, which is lower. 64, somewhat corrupt. Private media, like me, this is where we are. 21% of the people think most of us are corrupt, or all of us. 65% think some of us are. So you put a number together, that's 76. It's better than the others, but it's not good. Because we are the guys who claim to be in the middle, right? This is not right. So there's a very big challenge with corruption perception for even institutions, even NGOs who do very well in the trust. Some people still think they are corrupt, but of course the figure is much lower, 18%. All right, so you can say NGOs are doing well. Religious leaders, look at that. They shouldn't be on this list. But that's how we are in this world. All right, now let's go into the corruption a bit more deeply, all right? So they run the office of the president and then the members of parliament to see whether they correlate, and there's a clear correlation there. So orange is MPs, yellow is office of the president. MPs have been higher than the presidents until 2022. The president's slightly higher, right? So from 2008, MPs and presidency have correlated in their movement direction. So parliament, which is supposed to check the executive, is considered as corrupt as the executive. So what are you checking? So that's the problem, right? And MPs have been higher than the presidency until, or the office of the president until this latest round, where the office of the president is 3 percentage points higher. This is an indictment on governance. All right. Let's go further in the corruption discussion. Look at this. Judges, tax officials. So the police are in a comfortable lead. They are red. So since 2008, the police are perceived as more corrupt than judges and magistrates and tax officials. So there's been no single year that any of this has gone higher than the police. So how many police administrations have we had? So many. All right. So this is an institutional, systemic problem. It should not be blamed on a current leader or a past leader. There's something in the police that needs to be addressed, because this is over how many years? 16 years. All right, 16 years. Number two, tax officials and judges are alternating. All right. So for a period, judges were higher, tax officials overtook, and now tax officials are overtaken again. So if I have a problem with a tax official, they are trying to overtax me, and I go to a court, I may not get justice. This is something that requires a sober national reflection. All right, let's keep going. So the police have some work to do. This question is about, in your opinion, over the past 1 year, has the level of corruption increased or stayed the same or decreased? Right. So they want to know if you think corruption is getting better or worse. All right. So corruption perception was high, 83%, has increased. So red is bad. Yellow is average, black is good. And look at black. Black went up, black is down to 7%. Red is bad, red came down. So 2017 was an interesting year. That massive electoral turnover from NDC to MPP. So people give the MPP a clean start, but they've sort of gone back to this. So, and most of the data shows this type of thing, where in 2017, things get to a positive and then they decline ever since. So you can see, increased, 36%, 2017, 53, 2019, 77, 2022, 74. So this percentage, almost 4 out of 5 people think corruption is getting worse. That's not good. Of course, corruption has not featured as a top issue in the election. But corruption is more important. It's not just an election issue, it's beyond elections, right? So there's something obviously that's happening after 2017, which we need to look at. Okay, then this is a last one on corruption, where how well or how badly is the current government handling corruption? All right, so how well is the government handling corruption? Fairly well, and then fairly badly. Orange is bad, yellow is good. So if orange is high, it's not good, right? If yellow is low, it's not good, because we're saying those who think that the government is doing well in handling corruption has dropped from 44 to 16. So now nobody thinks the government is doing anything about corruption. Those who think the government is not doing well at all in corruption, look at that. 2012 was 56%. 2014 was 74, which was a high. Came down again. 2017, clearly there was goodwill for the new government. So in 2017, 33% said it wasn't doing well. By 2019, it was 54%. By 2022, it's 85%. Clearly, there's been an erosion of goodwill, good perception for this government from 2017 all through. And almost everything I'm showing you is depicting this. Something is going wrong after 2017, although it was a good start, a restart. What is the issue there? So you look at that, 82% of the people say the government's handling of corruption is fairly or very bad. Right? They don't think government is doing a good job in fighting corruption. Then let's move to the next one. Again, they do this for police, judges, and magistrates, the same thing, right? So the police outranking the others throughout the period, tax officials and judges alternating. Now, I'm going to take a short breather. When I come back, we're going to go into the elections. All right, so will people vote? What are the issues driving the votes? How many of them are undecided? Have they decided to vote for which party? Will they do skirt and blouse? These are very critical questions that the Afrobarometer raises about elections. And in this series also, I'm going to compare the responses here to the response from the NCC survey, because I think it's a very good way to check, right? You have Afrobarometer, which has been done for 25 years in Ghana. You have the NCC, which has been done since 2012, but I've seen from 2016. And then you have, of course, Global Info Analytics and Co., which are more recent. Are they saying the same thing? Here, when we come back, what are the top issues that Ghanaians think would affect the election? We'll compare that to what we found. This is the point of view. Another screenshot edition. Stay with us. Welcome back. Tonight on The Point of View, we're taking you through a presentation first done by the Afrobarometer team led by CDD here in Accra, Ghana. This is the round 10 on elections, corruption, and trust in institutions. We've established the public trust in institutions is at an all-time low for most institutions. Comparing from 2012 to date, the police, the presidency, MPs, almost every group has fallen in terms of public trust. Corruption perception has gone up for these same institutions as well. We've just shown you these. This is troubling time. EC, all these bodies, people don't trust them as much as they should. Second issue of inquiry, elections. As I said, it's 40 days to elections. Today is the 28th of October, right? We're voting December 7th. Now, this is a very important question. All right? So, the question they ask is, how should we choose our leaders? The orange line, people say, let's use elections. The black line say, let's use other means than elections. Right? Of course, democracy, elections are key part of democracy. So if there's no election, there's no democracy, all right? So essentially, this is a question around support for the most, in my view, the most important component of democracy, choosing your leader. All right? Now, this is since 2002. So this is how many years ago? 22 years. So this is a time series for 22 years. All right. Now, in 2002, 90% said, let's choose our leaders through elections. 9 out of 10 people. So if you meet 10 people in Accra and ask them, how should we choose our leaders? 9 of them will say elections. And then, of course, 89. So I'm running up to 90, right? And then 8% or 1 will say, 1 out of 10 will say, let's use other means than elections. This is 2002. Just 2 years after Rawlings left power, right? Now, the key thing to look at here is that this 89%, which is 9 out of 10, has come down to 81%. So now it's 8 out of 10 people. So another person has dropped. So in the 22 years, it used to be one person who disagreed with democracy or elections. Now it's 2 people. So we've lost one person of the 10 in 22 years. If the trend continues, in another 22 years, we'll lose another person, right? So by 2046, it will be 7 out of 10. And then 2067 is 6 out of 10. 2080 is 5 out of 10. If the trend continues, this is how trend analysis is done. So you shouldn't say, oh, well, 80% of people support democracy is okay. No, you should look at where you're coming from. Now, 2002, we had just done voting for 10 years, right? We've been voting for 10 years in 2002, and 90% of the people said, let's use voting to choose our leaders. Now, 22 years later, 10% say, no, we don't even think voting is helping us. These guys have been voting. They've been voting. So the problem is, these people who are 90% had just 3 elections, 92, 96, 2000. These guys have 8 elections. And they are thinking, oh, let's do something else. It means that they feel like elections is not helping. You see my point? So this is still a big, wide margin. But we shouldn't be complacent. We should not be complacent, because when people lose trust in elections, it leads to erosion of democratic gain. So we should be concerned about this. And the fact that in 2002, 8% said, oh, we should use other means to choose leaders. Now it's 18%. All right? If the trend continues, in another 20 years, 30%. Another 20 years, you see where I'm going with this. So this is not something we should be playing with, right? Support for elections has had a slight decline. That's the word to use. Slight but consistent decline. All right? The second question was, do we need a lot of political parties? Right? Because, some countries vote, but there's only one party to vote for. So voting is not enough. So the second question is that some people said, oh, we need many political parties to make sure that Ghanaians have a real choice. So that was the question they asked, right? So, and for this question, we've sort of come back down. So people who prefer us to have multi-party, in 2002, it was 57%. It went all the way to 81% in 2012. It's now back to 69, about 70%. Again, we should think about that, right? So the question was, do you think that we need to have many political parties? So this is a question around multi-party democracy and political plurality. This is a very important question, because somebody can say, let's vote, but let's just have one party. Kwame Nkrumah's time in the late 60s, right? Let's have only CPP. So voting is not enough. So the fact that only 69% of the people think we should have more parties is a problem. All right? It's a problem. I thought you should have asked a question around whether we should just have NDC, MPP, or whether we need more parties. That would have been a good question, because I think right now a lot of people are concerned about the duopoly. All right? The duopoly. In a sense, you can say those who say we want more parties are not happy with the duopoly, but that's not very clear. We probably should have asked a specific question about the duopoly. All right? But there is something about that in the next one. I'll come to that. This is a very important thing they did. All right? So the question was, don't forget, they interviewed 2,400 people across the country, and they made sure they were above 18. And they asked them, did you vote in the previous election? 77% said, yes, I voted. 20% said, I didn't vote. That's serious. 20%, I didn't vote. Wow, 20% didn't vote. Of course, 2% were too young to vote. So it means that they were 16 or 17 years old, or 15 years old, right? So that's not a problem. This 20% is big. It's a challenge, right? Did you vote in the last election? 20% of the respondents said, I did not vote. That's a problem. Now, freeness and fairness of the election 2020, 32% said it was completely free. 28% said free, minor problems. When you put that together, 60% is okay. Free and fair with major problems, 60. So this is okay. right? 17% said it was free and fair, but with some major problems, but still free and fair. Only 15% thought it wasn't free and fair. So that puts that to rest. 2020 election, most people think it was okay, right? So that's fine. This is good. This is good. All right. Now, this is an interesting question. If elections were held tomorrow, what would you do? They didn't ask them which party you would vote for. But 16% said, I won't vote. If elections were held tomorrow, I won't vote. This is problematic. Almost 30% says, I don't know, or I won't tell you. I won't tell you. So possible floating voters. Right? So only 56% say, I will vote. Wow. So turnout issues. Don't forget, NCC also did a turnout analysis, right? If 56% of the people are telling you, I will vote, 16% say, I won't vote. These guys either don't know or don't want to tell you. So hopefully, more of these guys move here. But if more of these guys move here, you have a problem. I suspect it will be a split. Some will move here, some will move here. So you're going to get probably another 20-25%. How good is that? Because the less people vote, obviously, fewer people choose. We don't know if more people is better, but this is a question around confidence in governance. All right? And the politicians must take care of this one. Only 50%. And this is August. Manifestos were being launched, though, in August. Manifestos were being launched on live TV. And only 56% said they will vote. Let's continue. Now, we are tracking the apathy issue. Those who say they won't vote, we wanted to know who they are. This is very interesting. NDC people, they say they will vote. Only 1% say they won't vote. So NDC people, they are voting. MPP too, they are voting, but 6% say they won't vote. So 5% gap. Right? The other issue here is this. See, the people who say they won't talk, that's the issue. It means that people are still not sure of these two guys. But we don't know if they will give their chance to somebody else. So it's clear that MPP has a relatively higher apathy problem than NDC. Because NDC supporters, as only 1% say they won't vote. But MPP, 6% say they don't vote. And these are supporters. Now, we are sure that, now these guys are saying, I'm not close to any political party. So these are floating voters, middle people. They vote for any party. 24% of them say they are not sure if they will vote at all. So it means that there are lots of people who don't support these two parties, who don't want to vote. Because they are tired of the two, but they don't know who to vote for. So Cheddar and Alan, these are your people. Go and look for them. All right. CPP, 29%. So CPP supporters also have a problem. But of course, the sample was much smaller. But CPP, why are 30% of your people saying they're not going to vote? Is it because they don't like your flag bearer? What's wrong? CPP, do something about this. But these mean that there's still a lot of people whose mind is not made up, which requires some work to be done. But MPP should be concerned, 6%. NDC, almost everybody is voting. And this shows, when we go into the NCC map I showed you earlier, I think I should go there before I come back here, if you can help me. Good. You see this map? This map for NCC, the darker color shows that they want to vote. The lighter color shows they will not vote. Now look at it. The lowest region for votes was Greater Accra. 70% said they will vote. Right? And then that was the second lowest was Ashanti. No, Eastern, 76.4. All right? 76.4, forgive me. 76.4 for Ashanti. All right? And then you have 78.6 Central. So this Greater Accra is number 1 for population. Ashanti number 2. Eastern number 3, Central number 4. 1, 3, and 4. A lot of people are not voting. Where are people voting? Northeast, 97. All of the North, 94.4. That's original North. Upper West, 94. OT, 94. 92. So this is the point we are raising. Other problem is those who say they are not voting are younger people, which is a big problem, right? Older people have voted more. They want to vote. The Gen Z, the group that say they won't vote, the highest chunk is in 18 to 25, 25 to 36. So what's missing? A lot of these guys haven't even voted before. They are not interested in voting. Is it what their parents are saying? Do they feel detached? Because the parties have been trying to woo them. And this agrees with what the NCC also found. Where am I? Because when the NCC also asked people, More indecision and willingness to vote was more common among females and among the younger voters. This is NCCE work they did separate from the Afrobarometer work, and it's the same conclusion. You see why it's a problem? So NCCE did their survey in September. 10% of the people who say they won't vote, or in this group, 10% say they won't vote, right? So the highest chunk of I won't vote is 18 to 25. And then you come here, and it's telling you the same thing. Different survey, different time, different sample. So it has to be, there's something there. Young guys, there's something wrong. 19% of these guys say they don't want to vote. Another 19% of this group. So the older they are, the more likely they are to vote. This is something, there's something here, right? The question was, if presidential elections were held tomorrow, which party's candidate would you vote for? The people who say they will not vote, 19% of them are 18 to 25. Serious. So when you put these two together, big problem. Right? So there's an apathy issue. There's also a generational apathy dimension. Very important to look at this as well. All right? Then we look at the breakdown. This is very interesting. People in cities are less likely to vote than those in villages. So people who say they won't vote, they are city dwellers, 19. Rural is 10. More women say they won't vote than men. So the men are determined to vote. The women are not interested in voting. This is an interesting one. The higher their education, the less likely they are to want to vote. So post-secondary people say, 18%. Those who have no formal education, only 10% say they won't vote. So it means that less education, but they believe that voting is their civic responsibility and their right, so they'll vote. The more school they go, the less they want to vote, right? And then this other dimension. So I think that there's an urban dimension to the issue, there's an age dimension to the issue, and then there's a wealth, there's a gender dimension to the issue as well. So the more urban, the less likely to vote. The more female, the less likely to vote. And then the more educated, the less likely to vote. This is very interesting for analysis. All right? This is very interesting for analysis. So more, and by the way, Greater Accra has the least interest in voting. And Greater Accra is the most urbanized. So again, it tallies. Greater Accra has 70% saying they will vote. 30% say they won't vote. And Greater Accra is highly urbanized. The regions that people say they are voting, the north, they are very ruralized, generally. And rural voters are less likely to say they will not vote. So and this is a different survey I'm bringing in. So there's a tally there. So basically, Afrobarometer and NCCE, they agree. Even though they are two different organizations doing two separate surveys at two different times, okay? This is what the voter intention by gender tells us. Again, from the NCCE, more women don't want to vote. More men will vote. Again, it agrees with what we just showed you previously, right? When we came to the gender dimension, those who say they won't vote, 20% women, 10% men. If you come to NCCE, more males intend to vote than females. Young people don't want to vote. So we clearly see more men will vote, more older people will vote, more rural dwellers will vote. So the typical interested voter is a man who is not in an urban area, and he probably is a bit highly educated. All right. So let me leave you with this, because this I think this is our power map for the two editorials. Our power map. The highest voting intention is in the north, lowest voter intention is in the south. Then you have Volta 88, Bono East 86, and then you have 86. Of course, it also tends to agree the Ashanti thing, right? And Ashanti is 81, MPP voters 6%, apathy, NDC 1%. So does the ruling government have an apathy issue they have to deal with? This seems to suggest this. When we come back, we'll get into some further details for you on the top issues that will affect the elections. This is a special edition of The Point of View, bringing you the Afrobarometer survey, the round 10. Stay with us. Welcome back. So the point of view tonight is essentially analyzing elections. We're also looking at trust in institutions and corruption. The Afrobarometer round 10 results are out, and we're analyzing this thanks to the research team at CDD. All right, now here's the final leg. What would influence your decision to vote, all right? Again, this question was asked for the previous survey for NCC as well. Now, a lot of the people said the candidate's honesty. 73% said a lot. Candidates' honesty will influence them a lot. 17% said a little. 5% said not at all. Character, another 70%. So, honesty and character are the leading things we are looking for. So, this vote for presidential and parliamentary, right? So, they are looking for people they can trust. Right? People are looking for people they can trust. So, politics is at the speed of trust, just like business is. Very interesting. This survey was taken during August when the parties were launching their manifestos. Only 32% say the campaign promise will influence my vote. All right. So I don't know if the parties understand this because there's a lot of campaign promises going on. The responses tell you that, in fact, 35% say they won't vote based on campaign promise at all. Imagine, 35% say, oh, campaign promise is not my cup of tea. Running mate is not a big issue. 49% say it's not an issue for me. All right. Of course, 21%, so we put it together, another 45%. So running mate is not such a big issue. Money, 65% say not at all. 15% say a little. 15% say, yeah, if you give me, I'll take. And it will influence my vote. We discussed that in the previous survey. Again, this confirms, or I won't even say confirms, the two agree. The two agree. That's a better word to use. Ethnicity and religion. Again, for the previous one, they were the two lowest. All right? So we are happy that ethnicity and religion are low. But there's no reason what people say and what they actually do. Right? But at least they are not happy to say they will vote based on these two. So over 60% say, I won't vote based on religion. I won't vote based on ethnicity. It's great to hear this. But we hope they actually do this, right? Which also means that it's not going to be profitable for parties to use that. So politicians, please, we want this number to reduce. We want ethnicity to come to zero. Because they are divisive issues, right? We don't put to vote on these two. So religion, 11%. Very similar to NCC, it was 10%, 9%. So again, the two surveys agree. So it's going to be difficult to say these are just surveys. It means Ghanaians are actually telling you the same thing, right? Now, the other question, of course, when we did the NCC survey, yes, religion was 10, ethnicity was 10, all right? And now we are showing religion 12, 11. So it's very similar, right? Candidates promise 84%. Candidates track record 83%. Party affiliation 41%. So they ask different questions. This has to do with the party affiliation and stuff. That has to do more with the personality and character. So you put the two together, you make sense of it. I won't spend too much time on this. Again, the same for parliamentary. Now, this is a very interesting question. Would you vote for a person for a presidential candidate and a parliamentary candidate from the same party? Close to 60% say, I'll choose the same, no skirt and blouse. But 15% already intend to do skirt and blouse. Another 6% say they'll do independent. If you put the two together, 21%. All right, and other combinations, I won't vote is also there. So basically, those who are doing hardcore, I'll vote for my party for president and run and parliament, is less than 60%. Should we expect a lot of skirt and blouse? I think that's a very important question to ask. Should we expect a lot of skirt and blouse? Because this is what we call the voting approach. Right? It means that people look at local issues different from national issues. Again, it's very important for us to consider. So let's go to the summary of what has been said. This is the summary that they gave, and I think it's a brilliant presentation. And of course, they didn't do this live on TV, but I'm showing this to you so you can get a cool gist, right? Armed forces, religious leaders, traditional leaders, NGOs, civil society are the most trusted. Armed forces is in a comfortable lead, right? From the first thing we said. Trust in key institutions witnessed marginal declines compared to 2022, but major declines since 2012. All of them, EC, everybody, trust fell by chunks. EC tracks 30%, presidency 20-something%. This is a very big issue. Trust in institutions compared to 2012 when Mills died. All of them are performing worse. Among key public officials, the police, the presidency, tax officials, MPs, and judges are widely perceived to be corrupt. A society where people don't trust their presidency, their police, their tax officials, and their judges and MPs is not good for a democracy like ours. We need to pay attention. All right? 74% of Ghanaians say corruption is increased somewhat or a lost. So they think corruption is on the wrong direction. Again, not very good for the government's stated efforts of fighting corruption, OSP notwithstanding. All right? There was an interesting question I didn't show you. People felt that if you report corruption, you will be punished for it. So about 26% believe that they can report corruption without fear of retaliation. The reverse, about 74% felt if I report corruption, somebody will retaliate. That was not good. So whistleblowers will not, people don't want to be whistleblowers, so people don't talk. They know somebody's corrupt, but they don't want to say, because they go and tell, they feel like they will not be protected. All right? Popular support for elections as a method for choosing leaders has remained high. However, there's an increase in those who think other methods should be adopted. I showed you from 89 to 81. I think it's a significant drop. For those who think we should use elections, those who think we should use other means has risen from 8 to 18. So a 10% increase in the past 2 decades. It's a problem for me. Many people thought 2020 election was okay, which is good, 60%. And then here's the key thing. They are looking for honesty and character, not promises. I think this is very powerful. So it's not your promise that will let people vote. They want men of character and honesty who will speak the truth to them. In fact, a lot of them felt your campaign message is not what you are going to use. I thought that was a very interesting. Probably I should go back to that one, because that for me is this one. All right? Only 32% will vote based on campaign promise. 35% say it won't influence me at all. Money, 65%. We should reflect on this. We are looking for men and women of character and honesty. I think this is a really, really useful. And I really want to thank our NGOs and CSOs, because from NCC last week to Afrobarometer this week, it's been a refreshing reflection on the state of our democracy. We are 40 days to election. I hope our politicians who are leading the campaigns are learning from this. We don't want money to induce votes. We don't even want you to give us a lot of promises. We want men and women of honesty, men and women of character. And I think that's a very great place to pause and reflect. So a big thank you to the team at CDD Ghana, Dr. Selome, Jay, and all the team that put this together. I did a redacted version of this and compared to NCC. Thank you for your work. We're looking forward to the second aspect of the survey that you are releasing in a few days' time. I think it's on Thursday, which will give us a few more details that this did not cover. So we are very grateful for the work you do. And want to thank all of you for watching a special edition of The Point of View on trust in institutions, corruptions, and election 2024. My name is Bernard Avle. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.